Daniel had rehearsed this moment 10,000 times. The speech was memorized word for word. "Mama, it is done. Everything we prayed for, it happened. You will never suffer again. 5 years across an ocean, 5 years of sleeping in cold rooms and working double shifts and swallowing his pride. All of it. Every single day of it was just the price he paid to get back to this moment." He was so certain of what awaited him, but what would happen next would leave him speechless and broken. The taxi turned onto the road where he grew up. The headlights swept across the dark, and there, on the ground at the side of that road, was something that made no sense. A shape, low, still. A pile of cloth, he thought. Something discarded. Then it moved. "Stop the car." His own voice sounded far away. "Stop the car. Stop." He was on the ground before the taxi finished stopping. Knees in the dust. Hands reaching out to know who was there, and at that moment his world stopped. Because the woman sitting in the dirt, thin in a way that frightened him, her dress torn, her shoes worn through to bare skin, was his mother. This is the story of what a young billionaire named Daniel came home to. What his own brother had done to their mother while he was gone. And the lesson that only reaches some people at the exact moment it is already too late. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Daniel Miller was a wealthy man. A very wealthy man. He owned 2 companies. He had money in banks in 3 different countries. He had a house abroad with 6 bedrooms, and a garden that his wife Clara filled with flowers every spring. Newspapers had written articles about him. Business people pointed at him as proof of what hard work and vision could build from nothing. And it was true because 5 years ago, before all of it, Daniel had been a quiet young man in worn-out shoes on the dusty back roads of a city that had not yet heard his name. He had grown up on those roads with his younger brother, Victor. Their father died when Daniel was 9 and Victor was 5. Neither of them was old enough to understand everything that death meant. But they both understood one thing, because they saw it every single morning before the sun came up. Their mother did not stop. Mama Grace, that was what everyone called her, and eventually it simply became who she was, had tied her wrapper tight around her waist the morning after the burial and gone to work. She started selling food at the side of the road near the big market. Bean cakes, fried plantain, small cups of pepper soup. She woke before 4 every morning, cooked in the dark, carried everything to her wooden table by the roadside, and sold until the food was gone. On top of that, she washed clothes for 3 families in the richer part of the city. She cleaned offices on weekends. Some evenings she came home so tired she could barely lift her arms. She never complained. Not once. Every morning without fail, she would appear at her son's bedroom door and say the same thing in that warm, certain voice of hers. "Get up, my boys. Today is going to be a good day. I can feel it." She said it on days when the money was almost finished. She said it on days when the landlord came knocking with a hard face and harder words. She said it the morning after Daniel came home from school with red eyes because the other children had laughed at his shoes, the ones with the cracked sole he had fixed himself with a strip of rubber. She had sat him down that evening, held his face in both her hands, and looked at him steadily. "Those shoes carried you to school and brought you back home safe. That is enough. Eat your food." She saved every dollar she could. She folded the notes carefully and kept them in a small tin box under her mattress. When Daniel needed school fees, she opened the tin. When he needed textbooks, she opened the tin. When he won a scholarship to study engineering abroad and needed money for the visa, the flight, the first months of rent, she opened that tin one final time. She counted every single note inside it. And she held the money out to him with steady hands. "Go," she said simply. "Go and become what I always knew you were going to be." Daniel had gone. And in the years that followed, he worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. He studied, he pushed, he failed some things and tried again. He took jobs other people did not want. He stayed late when everyone else went home. He never forgot the tin box. He never forgot what it had cost her. He sent money home every single month without missing once. First $200, then $500, then $1,000. As his income grew, he had the old apartment torn down and a proper house built in its place. Tiled floors, solid walls, a real kitchen, a good roof that would never leak in the rain. He put his younger brother Victor in charge of everything. Victor lived in the house with Mama Grace. Victor received the money. Victor sent the updates. "Mama is fine. Everything is fine, brother. Don't worry." And Daniel had believed him. He believed him because it was easier than not believing him. He believed him because he was busy with his companies, his travels, his plans. He believed him because deep in the part of himself he did not like to look at too closely, he had convinced himself that sending money was the same as being there. That paying for things was the same as caring for someone. That love posted across an ocean in the form of dollars every month was still love. He was about to find out exactly how wrong he was. The taxi was 15 minutes from the house when Daniel tried Victor's number one more time. Nothing. The call dropped. He put the phone in his pocket and looked out the window. The city passed by in the dark. Old streets. New buildings he did not recognize. The pothole near the corner that had never been filled, all these years later, is still there. He did not know why his stomach was tight. He was about to find out. The headlights swept across the side of the road. The shape, low to the ground. That first terrible thought. Just cloth, just something discarded. And then it moved. Daniel was out of the car before the driver had fully stopped. He crossed the road in 4 strides and knelt in the dust. And everything in his body recognized her before his mind caught up. Mama Grace's dress, once a deep blue he remembered well, had faded almost to gray, torn at the hem, dirty at the edges. Her shoes had worn through so badly that the sole of one had separated, flapping loose with each small movement she made. Her hands lay open in her lap like empty cups. She looked up at him slowly, the way someone looks when they have been somewhere very far away and are not yet sure the world they are returning to is real. Then something in her eyes shifted. "Daniel," she said. Her voice was so small, like a voice that had not been used in a very long time, and in that moment, the man who had built companies and crossed oceans and sat in boardrooms on 3 continents felt something inside him crack open, completely without warning and without closing again. He gathered her into his arms as carefully as he could, the way you carry something precious that you are terrified to break. She weighed almost nothing. She leaned into him slowly, as if she had been waiting for something solid to lean against for a very long time. "I'm here, Mama," he managed. "I've got you." At the hospital, the doctor's words came slowly and carefully. The way doctors speak when the news is serious and the person receiving it looks like they may not be able to hold it all at once. She was severely malnourished. Her body had not been receiving the food and water it needed for a long time. She had an untreated infection, weeks old, possibly longer. Her blood pressure medication had not been taken in months. Other health problems had been left without care. This did not happen overnight, the doctor said. And there was something in his voice that was not accusation. This kind of condition builds up over a long time of not being properly looked after. Daniel sat in the hard plastic chair in that corridor and thought about the money. $1,000. Every single month. Without missing once. He had been so proud of that. So certain it made him a good son. His mother had been sitting on the ground in a torn dress with shoes that had fallen apart at the sole. The money had not reached her. Not enough of it. Not in the ways that mattered. Victor forced himself to breathe. There would be time for that. First, his mother. Later that night, he went to the house. He walked in and stood in the entrance and looked around. The sitting room he had furnished himself. The long sofa in deep green fabric, the glass coffee table, the television mounted on the wall, the bookshelf Mama Grace had asked for specifically because she liked to keep her Bible somewhere she could see it was gone. All of it is gone. He walked from room to room. In each room, the same story is told differently. The dining table is gone. For chairs still there, lined up against the wall as if waiting for something that was never coming back. The kitchen is stripped, no cooker, no refrigerator. One pot on the floor, plastic cup beside it. His mother's bedroom. The bed frame is still there. The mattress gone. In its place, a thin folded blanket on the floor by the window. He stood in the doorway of that room for a very long time. Then he walked to Victor's old room. Empty. Cleared out. The only thing left was a single shoe under the bed. Just one. Which somehow made the whole thing feel more careless than if there had been nothing at all. Victor had not just left. He had cleaned himself out and walked away. If this story has gripped your heart, type, "I'm still here" in the comments right now. Let us see who is walking this road with us. The building with the blue gate on Crescent Road was tall, smooth-faced, with a security guard at the entrance and expensive cars lining both sides of the street. A different world from the one Daniel had grown up in. He took the stairs to the 4th floor. He needed those 4 flights. He needed the sound of his own footsteps on the concrete. The time to do something with the heat building in his chest. He breathed in. He breathed out. By the time he reached apartment 4B and knocked, he had put the heat somewhere manageable. Not gone. Just held. The door opened. Victor had put on weight since Daniel had last seen him. He was wearing a silk-look shirt in pale yellow, expensive trousers, and slippers that probably cost more than most people's shoes. He was holding a phone. He stared at Daniel and then he smiled. Not a real smile. The quick surface smile of a man who has been caught off guard and is reaching for familiar armor. "Daniel. Brother. You're here. Why didn't you tell me you were?" "Don't," Daniel said quietly. The smile changed shape. Became something harder underneath. Victor stepped aside. Daniel walked in. The apartment was beautiful. Large. Airy. A wide leather sofa. A large television is on the wall. A glass dining table with 4 chairs. A kitchen visible through a wide arch, clean, stocked. A proper cooker fitted neatly into the counter. Daniel stood in the middle of the sitting room and looked around slowly. Then he looked at his brother. "This is a beautiful place," he said. Victor said nothing. "I found our mother sitting on the side of the road 2 nights ago," Daniel said. His voice stayed quiet. That was the thing about real anger, the deepest kind. It did not need to be loud. She weighed almost nothing. She has an untreated infection. She has not had her blood pressure tablets in 8 months. She has been getting food from a church neighbor. And she was locked out of the house I built for her. He took one slow step forward. "I need you to explain to me clearly where my money went. All of it for the last 2 years. Victor raised his eyes. And there it was, underneath the expensive shirt and the soft face and the practiced ease. Something raw. Something cornered. Something that had been pressing against a door from the inside for a very long time. "Your money," Victor said. Quiet, but with an edge sharpened over the years. "That is what you just said. Your money." "Victor, no. You came to ask me questions. Fine. Let me ask you one first." He stepped forward. "Do you know how long I lived in that house taking care of everything? Paying people, managing repairs, sitting with Mama when she was sick. All of it. Every single day. While you were on the other side of the world living your big life." His voice was climbing. "Not all the way. Not yet. Do you know what it feels like to be the one who stays? To be the one nobody writes articles about? To be invisible while everyone talks about how great Daniel is, how successful Daniel is, how proud we should all be of Daniel." He stopped. His jaw was tight. "You sent money." "Yes. But you didn't send yourself. You sent dollars and called it love and went back to your life." The room was very quiet. "Victor," Daniel said after a long moment, "what you are describing, the years you spent there, the work, the loneliness, I hear you. I hear all of it." He paused. "But our mother is in a hospital bed right now. She was sitting on the ground on a dark street, sick and alone and hungry. That is not about what I did or didn't do. That is what you did." Victor looked away. "You sold her furniture. You stopped buying her medication. You changed the lock and walked out." Daniel's voice stayed level. Just level, like a flat road with no give in it. "I need you to help me understand how you got from feeling invisible to doing those things to that woman." Victor sat down on the leather sofa. He put his head in his hands. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice had changed. The sharpness was still there, but underneath it was something tired. Something that sounded very faintly, like a boy who had made himself stop crying a long time ago and was not sure he remembered how to start again. "It got too much," he said. "The money was never enough for everything. The house always needed something. Mama's tablets, her doctor visits. And my own life, I had nothing that was mine. I was just the man in Mama's house, managing your money, living your charity." He stood and walked to the window. "I started taking a little for myself. Just a little at first. And then a little more. I told myself I deserved it. I told myself you owed me." He was quiet. "And by the time I understood I had gone too far, I had gone so far I could not see the way back. So I just kept going." Daniel stood still and listened to those last words. "I just kept going." He knew that sound. The sound of a person describing the moment they chose to stop choosing. The moment they handed the wheel to something worse than themselves and just watched where it drove. He recognized it. He did not excuse it, but he recognized it. "Do you know what I did the night I found her?" Daniel said. He crossed the room and stood beside his brother at the window. I slept on the floor of the house, on my jacket, because there was no mattress. Victor said nothing. I lay there in the dark thinking about you. Not about what you did, though I thought about that too. First I thought about you. The small boy who used to come into my room because he was scared of the dark and didn't want Mama to know. Victor turned his face slightly away. I understand some of it, Daniel continued. I left you carrying something heavy. I sent money and told myself that was enough, and it was not. I know that now, and I will carry it for the rest of my life. He paused. But Victor, there is a line. There is a line between struggling under a heavy load and putting that load on someone weaker than you. Between feeling unseen and selling the mattress from under an old woman. She was sleeping on wooden slats. Her medication ran out 8 months ago. She could have died alone in that empty house while you were here in a silk shirt. Victor flinched. So here is what is going to happen. Daniel turned and faced his brother fully. You are going to come with me to the hospital. You are going to sit across from our mother and look her in the eye. Not at your phone. Not on the floor. At her face. Victor's eyes were wet now. Not dramatically, he had never been a dramatic crier. The tears came quietly, the way water finds the lowest point and simply runs there. She won't want to see me, he said. She asked about you last night, Daniel said. Before she fell asleep. She asked where you were. Victor blinked. That is the woman you put out of her house. She was asking where you were. Go and put on proper clothes, Daniel said quietly. We leave in 10 minutes. What Mama Grace said next, not to Victor but about herself, is the part of the story most people do not expect. The hospital room was quiet when they walked in. Mama Grace was sitting up in bed, her color returning, her eyes clear. She looked at Daniel first. Then her eyes moved to the man standing behind him. What crossed her face was the expression that only mothers carry, the one that holds sorrow and love and disappointment and hope all at once, in the same look, for the same person. It lasted only a second before she settled into stillness. Victor stepped into the room and stood at the foot of the bed. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He tried again. Mama, he said. And that voice, always so smooth and easy and ready for any room, cracked completely on that one word, like old wood breaking down the middle. Come and sit down, she said. He lowered himself into the chair beside the bed slowly, like a man sitting before a judge. His hands rested on his knees. His eyes, for once in his life, did not look for somewhere easier to be. I know what you did, Mama Grace said. I am not going to pretend I don't know. And I am not going to shout. I am too tired for shouting. But I want you to listen to me the way you used to when you were small. Yes, Mama. I have been lying in this bed thinking, she said. Not only about what you did. About what I did. Victor looked up sharply. Let me speak. He closed his mouth. I made mistakes with you, Victor. When Daniel did well, I talked about it. I told everyone. I let that pride be loud, and I left you behind in the noise of it. I put things on your shoulders that were too heavy and did not say thank you the way I should have. I compared you to your brother, without even realizing I was doing it. And that was wrong. A child should never be measured against another child. The room was very still. That does not excuse what you did. Nothing excuses it. You know that and I know that. But I am your mother. And part of what is true is that I played a role in breaking something in you that should never have been broken." Victor's head went down, and the sound that came out of him was the sound of a grown man crying the way he had not cried since childhood. Raw, unguarded, without pride. Years of sealed things coming open all at once. Mama Grace reached out her thin hand and placed it on top of his. She did not say anything. She just held his hand and let him cry. Daniel turned to face the window and let his brother have that moment without being watched. After a while, the crying quieted. "I'm sorry, Mama," Victor said. The words came out rough and real. "I'm sorry for everything." "I know," she said softly. "I know. But you are still my son. You will always be my son. That does not change. It will never change." Victor pressed her hand to his forehead and stayed there. Mama Grace looked across the room at Daniel. He turned from the window and met her eyes. She held out her other hand. He crossed the room and took it. And the three of them stayed like that for a long time. The old woman in the hospital bed. One son on each side. Her hands are holding both of them. Morning light coming slowly through the window, filling the room with something quiet and without a name. Love, even when it is real, does not cancel consequences. Daniel believed in forgiveness. He intended to work toward it with everything he had. But he also believed that a man who had taken what did not belong to him and left his mother to suffer in the street could not simply cry, say sorry, and continue as though no one had been hurt. 3 days after Mama Grace was discharged, Daniel sat down with a lawyer. Victor was ordered to repay in full every dollar he had taken over 2 years. He was given a formal warning. He was required to complete a program, one that involved sitting in a room with other people and talking honestly about what he had done and why. He was not sent to prison. Daniel had not asked for that. Mama Grace had not asked for that. What they asked for was that Victor could not simply walk away as though it had not happened. That was what they got. Daniel stayed for 3 months. He fixed the house properly, new paint, repaired gate, cracked tiles replaced, and a generator so his mother would not sit in darkness. A good bed with a proper mattress. He made Mama Grace lie on it before it was fully set up, just to see her face. She laughed. The real laugh, loud and unashamed, filling the room and spilling out through the open window. He stood in the doorway and listened to it. There it is, he thought. I was beginning to think I would never hear that again. Clara came 6 weeks later. She and Mama Grace sat together in the garden every afternoon, talking the easy way of 2 women who understand each other without needing to explain much. Daniel would watch them through the window and feel something in his chest that had no precise name, but that was warm and solid and felt like arriving somewhere. He also restructured his schedule. He had been working at the pace of a man who believed that if he stopped moving, something terrible would happen. He understood now that something terrible had happened precisely because he had not stopped. He arranged to work 2 weeks of every month from home, here in this city on this street. Cost him something. He made the change anyway. On his last evening before flying back, Daniel sat with his mother in the garden as the sun went down. The air was warm and smelled of earth and something flowering. Somewhere nearby, a radio played an old song that neither of them could name, but both of them knew. "Are you happy, Mama?" he asked eventually. She considered the question the way she always considered things. "I am peaceful," she said. "That is better than happy. Happy comes and goes. Peaceful stays." He nodded slowly. Are you happy? She asked. He thought about it. The hospital. The empty house. Victor's apartment. The long dinners and difficult silences and slow, careful rebuilding of something that had cracked open. I think I am becoming happy, he said slowly. Mama Grace nodded, as if that was exactly the right answer. The sun finished its long descent. The sky turned the deep orange-purple of evening. The mango tree in the corner stood in the gathering dark the way it had always stood, patient, old, and entirely itself. Daniel looked at his mother's profile in the fading light. He thought about the tin box, the 4 o'clock mornings, the 3 jobs, the worn-out shoes she had never complained about. The scholarship money was counted out by hand and placed in his palm. Go and become what I always knew you were going to be. He had gone. He had become. He had built things and earned things and crossed oceans. But sitting here in this small garden next to this woman who had given him everything she had and never once called it a sacrifice, he understood something he had not understood before. The greatest thing he had ever built was not a bridge, company, or bank account, it was this. And he was going to spend the rest of his life making sure it did not fall again. He reached over and took his mother's hand. She turned to look at him, and she smiled. And in the quiet garden, as the last of the light faded and the stars showed themselves one by one in the wide dark sky above the city, Daniel Miller, the boy from the thin-walled apartment, the man who had built everything, the son who had almost lost the most important thing, finally fully came home. What lesson did this story leave with you? Drop it in the comments. And tell us, have you ever loved someone from a distance and told yourself that was enough? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next. We will see you in our next story, friends.